Good afternoon. All right, whatever I say up here right now, don't stop eating, okay? All right, we want you to enjoy your meal and finish up. But we do want to get started with some of the information we want to present to you today, so we can be done with everything here in a good hour, about by 3 o'clock, okay? And first of all, man, we really appreciate you coming and staying for this today. Randy did a good job, I thought, this morning in the second service, describing what the purpose of this meeting is today. And we are just really glad that you have chosen to stay here and help us with this process. Did everybody get a folder? Some blue, some red, some green, some black. I don't know what all the colors are. They're all the same, okay? Don't worry, you don't have to do the dishes if you've got a green folder. But if you didn't get one, we want to make sure that you get one here today, because we're going to be doing some stuff out of the folder throughout the rest of the day. I would ask you if you can eat and look at the same time. I want to go through the agenda with you this morning or this afternoon. Okay, what we're going to be doing and about what the time frame will be. As soon as I get done here, which hopefully will be in just a minute, Randy is going to come up and he's going to talk to you about some of the key things we learned in the discovery phase of this big picture process. All right, and that's the discovery phase is when we did the Bible study. It's part of our demographic survey that we did, and it's also a part of the ministry analysis that we have already completed. Okay, that's good. Okay. All right. So we're going to spend some time on that, and we'll actually probably spend about 40 minutes on this. All right, so starting in just a minute or two. All right, because that will tell you what the basis is of what we're doing here in the next phase. All right, I'll be back up and talking a little bit after that is completed about the dream phase, which is where we dream about what ministries do we believe would help us to reach the brokenness of our community, of our neighborhoods. Okay, and so I'm going to talk to you about that process, and then just spend a couple of minutes talking about what comes next in this total process after that. But by 2 o'clock, our hope is that we're breaking into groups, okay? Groups hopefully where you could participate in dreaming about what ministries might we have or we might be able to do that would reach the brokenness in the community. You know, when I dream about Kenwood Heights Christian Church, all right, I dream about a lot of people, okay, all right? I dream about the output of people doing things and having fun and fellowship and learning and serving and all of those type of things. But you know what? Too often, I do not dream at all, or think at all, about the people that could be part of this church, that could be providing the right service to others in our community. All right. And what we hope we do today is that we begin this process or continue this process of beginning to focus on the people in our particular community. So when we break at 2 o'clock, or after this initial presentation, at 2 o'clock, we're going to ask you to get into a group with, maybe you're heavily involved already in children's ministry or teaching or some other group of youth or some other group, although youth's not a good choice because they're not here today. Okay, all right. And just to dream about the future, and not just what we vision it should look like when we're done, but dreaming about and thinking about what are some specific things we could do, or perhaps do, all right? And as you're dreaming about those things, okay, we don't want you to limit yourself, all right? If every dream you have is a diamond dream, all right, that it's going to be sparkly and shiny and it's going to cost $1 bajillion, but you think it could work, you guys talk about it, all right, and see if that's something we want to, at least we want to look at. Okay, all right, but that's what our plan is for the day, that we'll spend that last hour from 2 to 3, and we will be done at 3 o'clock, okay? right? Just dreaming about what ministries we could possibly have here that would meet the needs of our community. Okay? If you, everybody has a book, Phil? Great, all right. Well, Randy's going to come on up and do some talking for
You can kind of follow along down your agenda if you'd like to kind of keep up. I know how we are as people. I'd like for you to turn to page 2 if you're not already flipping that far. Just one page past the agenda. And as you look at that sheet there, you see a listing of all the Bible study topics that were covered by our January through March Bible study groups. And these 3 particular books that we studied, Matthew, Acts, and Ephesians, were done for a reason. The book of Matthew, within that, Jesus teaches a lot about the church. And it's just a powerful book as he lays out his vision, as he defines the church, as he does all the things there that we read and we studied about. You can see the topics that are listed there. The book of Acts is where the apostles were key in launching the church that Jesus had taught about. And so not only do we have the teaching and the modeling, the defining, but then we turn to Acts and we see that all finally put into motion as the apostles carried out what Jesus had taught and prepared them to do. And then the book of Ephesians is often called the ideal church because it's the only letter written to a church that didn't address a problem. And so within that book are some key teaching elements, some really good models, some good examples, some great teaching, some powerful things that the gospel of Jesus came to bring. And so these 3 books were chosen. You see the list of topics that we worked through. This group was primarily, the ones who were asked to be a part of this were certainly all the staff, all the leaders. But then we issued invitations to people who were leaders in various areas of ministry. And so those were the ones that we invited. Some others stepped in and joined us. We were certainly fine with that. Anyone could have come, but it was a great time of study. There were great discussions that took place there in a lot of the groups. And we got to talk about Jesus' intentions, his desires as he built the foundation of the church. And it also got us thinking about our church. You know, you can't help but be reading through the New Testament, looking at churches, teachings about churches, a model church, and not find yourself at some point thinking about, do we do that? How well do we do that? Do we do that at all? You know, and it kind of raised some of those questions, which are valid questions. You know, those are things that we think are quite important as well. And it was all a part of that Bible study. And it was a good Bible study. I know a number of people were disappointed when it ended, but we couldn't continue with other studies because we had so much other work to do. But it gave us an idea of some things that we might want to look at in our future. So I want you to turn with me now over to page 3. Because after this Bible study was completed, over the process of the next couple of months, we realized that we really needed to drill down on 7 topics. 7 topics of teaching, 7 topics to evaluate, 7 topics about the church that we need to soak as much out of that as we could before we move forward. And so you see listed here 7 priorities of the church in pages 3 through 5. You know, preacher, I almost said verses 3 to 5. But in pages 3 to 5, you find there the summary document of our Bible studies. This study was done by the staff and several of our elders between the months of July and September. And if you want the fuller version of this, all you got to do is flip back to page 6. And there you find what says right under that big block of title, reference information. Because in essence, the introduction there before church is the very same on both sheets, but what is here on pages 6 through 10 are the fuller version, particularly of the opening studies that we did. Therefore, under church, for instance, how did Jesus define the church? How did he do it? You see there a summary of all the study that we did. How did the apostles live out his teaching? All on page 6 under church. Both of those are listed there, but if you go back to page 3, all you see is a 3-sentence summary. So that summary is of what you see there on page 6. I hope that's fairly clear. We looked at the 7 priorities. We had a sermon series on these. These were church, evangelism, discipleship, leadership, transforming neighborhoods, ministering to the hurting, and commitment. We know those are powerful topics within the ministry of Jesus, foundation stones for the church. And so this is an area where we spent a lot of time studying together. And it was a good study, and it has really helped all of us as we have continued to think about what we've studied. What you see next, I'm going to go back to page 3 because it's a shorter version. But right under that 3-sentence paragraph under church, you see the word alignment. And as we were going through this topic and looking at these verses on the church and studying what Jesus said about the church, we began to look at our own church and say, what are some things we need to do to better align ourselves with what is taught in these scriptures? And so under alignment, under all 7 of these priorities, you will see some things that we saw that we need to make some adjustments on, make some changes on, begin doing in a better way that more reflects what we learned about in our studies of these Bible texts. And so you will see alignment for church, alignment for evangelism, alignment for discipleship. And obviously these are things that we can't all just change overnight and start doing differently. But these are things that we will be looking at when we get to our vision statement and our 3-year plan, things that are coming up a little further down the road. And we will begin addressing some of these areas where we know we need to grow, we need to step up, we need to do things differently to better match what we're reading about in the New Testament. Let's move over to page 11. That information is there on those 7 priorities. We want you to take that home and look that over at your leisure. And if you would like more material on any of that, please let us know. I'm happy to share with you scriptures that we studied specifically. If you want to go through them and look them at yourself, you can certainly do that. On page 11, you see listed there our new mission statement. To become like Jesus and share him intentionally in local, national, and global neighborhoods. That's our new mission statement. That is the fruit of all this studying that we have been doing. I want to talk to you just a little bit about the mission statement because this is such a significant statement for us as a church. It needs to be more significant to us probably than how we've used any other mission statements that we've had over the last several decades. Our mission statement, you see some of the summary information there. I'm just going to kind of highlight it a little bit. But our mission statement states our purpose as a church. It talks about why we exist. If we are not doing this, we're not being the church. And so we realize that this is something we don't just dream up and decide it's going to be our mission statement, but we realize that this is a purpose that Jesus established. It doesn't take long reading the New Testament to see that Jesus wanted us to be about this. We are to become more like him. We're to become his disciple. And then we are to share him with our community on a national scale, globally. That's simply what we're called to do. A church's mission statement should come from the words of Jesus. He is our authority. He's our Lord. He's our master. He died for us. We have committed ourselves to be his servants, to be his followers, to take his purposes forward in the generation in which we are. And so it's important that we realize that the authority for this comes from him and him alone. And certainly one of the things that we learned in our process of doing this is that this statement needs to be memorable. It needs to be something that you see often enough and you think about often enough that you could quote it back to somebody. If somebody came up to you and said, what's our mission statement? You should be able to just tell them as a member of this church. I want to tell you what the old mission statement was. Nothing wrong with it. Kenwood Heights Christian Church exists to bring people to Jesus Christ, to teach them His Word, and involve them in the ministry of His church within our community and around the world. Now that's a great statement. We can't chop it up and say, oh, that's not a good statement. That's a great statement. It comes right out of Matthew 28, Matthew 22. What we realize is, if we look at this statement, it could be brought into fewer words, and certainly we could make it a little more memorable. So it is shorter, it is more succinct, and certainly it is one that is more memorable, and one that we hope that you will certainly commit to memory. And so this is our mission statement: to become like Jesus and to share Him intentionally in the local, national, and global neighborhoods. You can expect to see this statement a lot. You can expect to hear it a lot. And it's going to be the basis of ministries. It's going to be the basis of preaching and teaching. And it's going to be out front much more as we move to the future. The two key themes, and you see this statement broke apart. The two key themes in here are discipleship and evangelism. Become like Jesus, discipleship. Grow to be His follower. Evangelism, share Him intentionally in local, national, and global neighborhoods. Okay. Let's move on to the next page, page 12. What you see there are core values. And these core values came directly from our studies of the 7 priorities. We kind of sat down and talked about, again, what do we squeeze out of these many, many things that we've learned about that are guiding principles, that are guardrails? What are things that are going to guide our ministries and help us to know what to do, what not to do? That just become, as you're driving down the road, those rails on the side that keep you from going off. Because as a church, we tend to do that. You know, we drift into good stuff, but we lose sight of the best stuff. And that's just easy because we want to do good things. We want to help people. We want to help with this. We want to do that. And it's just so easy. Like all of our personal lives, if you don't have some guardrails up, eventually your schedule's so full you can't hardly breathe. And sometimes as a church, we find that that's the very same thing. But we realize these all have to be biblical. You notice the statement there, and you know, if you read it at first, it seems confusing. Core values are biblical statements, but not doctrinal statements. And some people read it and think, huh? You know? But what this really saying is all these core values are taught in the Bible. But they're not necessarily doctrinal statements. Doctrinal statements would be there's only one God, the creator of all. Jesus is His one and only begotten Son, Savior of the world. The Holy Spirit is part of God, the Father, Son, the Spirit. You take communion once a week. You know, those kinds of things are doctrinal statements. But what's here is not necessarily that. What's here is biblically, what is given to us as guardrails to guide our ministries in the church. And you notice as you look at these, they're broke again into the same 2 categories as our mission statement. There's discipleship statements, character development. What do we want to become to be like Jesus? And so what we find as we look through here, entry into God's kingdom involves transformational life change. In other words, we've understood from reading the New Testament that when you become a Christian, it's not just something you've added to your life. It's not just one of many things that you've stuffed into your life. Jesus intends for the church to be first. He is first. His body is first. It is to be, His teaching is to change your life. There should be new fruit coming from your life when you become a follower of Jesus. There should be constant changes of holiness and what we call sanctification, becoming more holy as you follow Jesus and you devote your life to Him. And that continues all through your life. So His kingdom should bring transformational life change. Second, 100% commitment to follow Jesus and His kingdom values with no conditions and no reservations, regardless of the consequences. Jesus calls us to follow Him with our whole heart. First, Lord, master. That's what he's called us to. And that's the commitment that we made. And that is the life that we need to learn to model in a greater way. And I'm not saying some of you aren't doing this already, and all of us aren't doing it to a certain level, but I think it's good for us to understand, and people that come into this body and start thinking about the church need to understand that our commitment level to Jesus Christ is our first commitment. They need to see it, they need to hear it, they need to see it modeled in our lives. And we're going to be teaching about that kind of discipleship. Discipleship is a process we use to make disciples of Jesus. This is every believer's responsibility. When you come into the church, when anyone comes into the church, it's very important that they understand that when they're an infant in Christ, we are going to do all we can to feed them, to give them a program, to develop them. These are things that we need to get more intentional and establish in our ministry. People come into church, this is how we want you to grow. But we need people to step up and say, it's my responsibility to make sure I do these things. That I'm going to be a part of this discipleship study. I'm going to become this kind of follower of Jesus. I'm going to make decisions that reflect the priorities of Christ. I am going to become a follower of Jesus. And what you see there is just some of the processes that we see in the New Testament that help us to do that. We learn and obey God's word. We faithfully remember Jesus' sacrificial death for our sins. We learn to share life with a family of believers. We're linked together, praying together, faithfully worshiping God together, serving God and serving others with humility and generosity, mentoring others to teach and can serve them. Mentoring, linking people together, someone more mature in the faith, someone not so. A guide, a help to lead you. We're not currently doing that. We're going to do that because we think it's that important to people's growth. It's part of becoming a follower of Jesus. The third point down there you see is that Jesus developed leaders who teach, equip, and model the lifestyle they seek in their followers. Elders are godly men who are responsible for the spiritual growth and health of the church family. The Word of God and prayer are central to their task. We've talked about how we need to move to that biblical model and look more to our deacons who are servant leaders who are delegated by the elders to take care of more administrative tasks for the church family. I'm so grateful that we've added 2 new deacons this year, the 2 great deacons we already have. We just need more of them. But we need qualified people to step into those roles. So discipleship is going to be turned up several notches here as we continue to look at our plan for this year. There will be several steps that we will take to intentionally move us in this direction as a church family. These are core values for discipleship. The second one you see there is evangelism, reflecting our mission. The daily we build compassionate and redeeming relationships in our local, national, and global neighborhoods. This is our joy and passion. I can't say I've been a part of a lot of churches that looked at evangelism as a joy and a passion. But we are going to become one of those churches. Because that's what we see in the New Testament. People were that excited about Jesus. And they couldn't help sharing. And that's what we're going to become. We're going to help train you. We're going to help open your heart. But you got to be willing. And I want you to be a part of this with us. We have a heart for every lost person. Every lost person. And we'll help the broken we encounter so we can share Jesus with him or her. We're just not out to do good deeds. We're going to do good deeds. We're going to help people. Why? Because we want to share Jesus with them. We're going to talk about how we can better do that as a church as we move forward. Jesus is our focus rather than programs or events. Our major thing is to lift up Jesus. It's not how great a program is. It's not how great an event is. But the primary thing is we want people to see Jesus. It needs to be about him. It needs to be about glorifying him. And these are things that are incredibly important to us. We will share Jesus with everyone, but focus greater resources on the receptive. We realize that sometimes when we're down to resources of dollars and cents, people, sometimes we can't do everything evangelistically that we want. And when we come to those decisions, we are going to focus our resources on where we see the most receptivity. And hopefully God will change hearts and other areas will become more receptive. We'll keep sowing seed, Matthew 13, but we're going to focus resources on the most receptive. We equip our people to share Jesus in every neighborhood. You live in a neighborhood. There's people around you that need Jesus. How do you begin reaching them? That's something we want to talk about. That's something we want to get more intentional about, and something we're going to train you to do as we move forward. These are core values. These are ways that we have committed to reading the New Testament, to grow disciples, to become like Jesus, and to share Him intentionally with our global, or our local, national, and global neighborhoods. And so these are things we are about. These are our core values. These are our guardrails, our mission statement, our core values that will guide our church and our ministries that are all based on Jesus' teaching in the New Testament. Okay. Donna? There she is. Come on ahead.
I had to bring my glasses up with me just in case. I never know what I'm going to be able to see today. Just about this time last year, I started meeting with the steering team of the strategic visioning process. And as a part of that team, one of the things that I became charged with was to work with the demographic team and make some decisions about how we could gather data about our community and our church. And so myself and Lynn Jones and Adam Wilson had a lot of different conversations sitting around my kitchen table, talking with each other, and also looking at information about our church and our community. And so I don't have time to walk you through, if you're interested in seeing the maps we used and a lot of the detailed information that we used, I can certainly share that with you one-on-one. But I did want you to know that Randy mentioned in his sermon this morning that we worked with a group called Percept to give us some comprehensive data information about what our neighborhoods look like. And they are specialists. They have been gathering data, not just census data, but other research data since the 1970s. I was amazed at some of the questions that they asked on the surveys that they use and the kind of information that they had. We got a very detailed report that was over 60 pages in the end, comparing our congregation. You remember we did the congregational survey, and we had 122 responses from our congregation, comparing our congregation to the neighborhood within a 3-mile radius of the church. And we chose a 3-mile radius of the church because we did a lot of work looking at the zip codes of where our active members live. We did a survey last year with the Upward families at the banquet and got some information from them. And so we settled on a 3-mile radius because that covered the zip codes of about 70% of the people who are actively and regularly attending the church here. That also covered portions of 2 other zip codes that we also have active members in. And we chose that 3-mile radius after looking at different options too, because we knew that if we tried to cover every single zip code that someone who attends here might live in, or someone who visits the church might live in, that would dilute our data so much that it becomes not as helpful to us. We received that comprehensive report about the neighborhood, and as I mentioned, we completed the congregational survey, and the results really helped us see our congregation. I mean, I know Randy also mentioned in his sermon this morning that if you're out in the neighborhoods, if you're in businesses in this area, or you're doing things in this community, we all have perceptions about who's in the community and what their needs might be and what kinds of families we have here, but we wanted to have some confirmation of that. And so this data enables us to do that, to confirm who really is living in our area and what their needs and concerns and brokenness are. So we use those results to determine the brokenness in our neighborhood. If you look at page 13, you'll see some information there about the brokenness. And we also used it to create a profile or a typical picture of a family in the neighborhood that we might be trying to reach. And that's on page 14. So you'll see 13 and 14. And some of you I know have seen the profile information before. If you were involved in some of the ministry teams, you may have already seen that. We've been able to discover a lot about our neighbors and about their needs. And as you've already heard this morning, if you heard the sermon, that brokenness is defined as the broken patterns in our lives that we have as a result of sin. All of us have sin, and in short, what breaks us is sin. Those of us who are Christians often realize that that's what's happening, but sometimes non-Christians don't even realize that the things that are so difficult in their life and the things that are not going well and the family relationships that are broken and other problems that they're having are a result of not being within the ideal pattern, not living within the ideal pattern that God has established for us. So the areas of brokenness in our neighbors' lives are listed here. There are 6 main areas on page 13. And you've already seen some information this morning about those. We did spend quite a bit of time looking at the data that we had back about concerns that people in our neighborhood have, but we also had to draw some conclusions just based on things that we saw in the data that people may not even realize should be of concern to them. One of the things, for instance, the last thing you see on the list, or the last couple things, are parenting and fulfilling marriages. Our rate of single mothers and single fathers in this area who have households, the number of households who have children under 18 and are headed up by a single parent makes up just under half. It's about 49% of our neighborhood. So we see those things as being really important problems that we need to help people address. But the one that was even most interesting that we have at the top of the list is seeking a good church. One of the things that was when our consultant from Cincinnati Christian Leadership saw this in our data, he said, most churches would be jumping up and down if they saw this, because about 23% of people said that they were looking for a good church, that they were seeking, spiritual teaching. 23% of the people reflected in this survey is 13,580 people. 13,580 people within a 3-mile radius of this church. So they are seeking, and we want to be there to help them find. So if you look at the following page, the profile of Ken, we created a profile of a typical family that you would see in our neighborhood, because about 49.5% of our families who have children under 18 are in married relationships, married households. And so we decided that we would do a male profile, because if the male attends church, the rest of the family is likely to attend as well. And so you can see there the characteristics of a typical male head of household in a married family in our area. One of the interesting things we also saw in the data is that most people reported that they had some background in the church, that they had grown up attending church, or they had some experience with church, but for some reason they were no longer involved. And then about 40% of those in our neighborhood had a Baptist background. and many of them are no longer attending church. So you'll also see here some of the other highlights from the data. I already mentioned one of the prominent groups in the area is single parents, specifically single moms. 3,000 households with children under 18 in the area are headed by single mothers. About 1,000 households headed by single fathers. And 4,106 households headed by children, that have children under 18 are headed by married couples. In addition, the ethnic diversity of our neighborhood is changing, our community is changing. And you can see the specific numbers here. I tried to highlight not only the percentages, but the numbers to give you an idea of the impact that this could be having in our neighborhood. And some of the projections, because one of the things that Percept does is not only give you the data about where your community is now, but where they expect, based on the trends over the last several years, it will be in 2022, which is 5 years from now. So if you look, you'll see here some information about where the community is likely to be in the next 5 years. So basically what we found was that in our area in general, there are young families, like Ken's, like our profile. They make up about 5,900 households in our area. And the other group of people that was most prominent were those who were 60 and older. And Percept calls these established empty nesters, those who are in retirement. And those households make up about 3,400 households in our neighborhood. So as you'll see in the profile, we mentioned that a lot of times younger families are also have older aging parents or aging family members that they're trying to care for, as well as their children. So I hope that gives you a basic sketch of what we found through the demographic team. I could talk numbers with you all day. You probably don't want to ask me, because I'd be more than happy to, and I know Lynn and Adam probably would too, because we've looked at this so in depth. We could talk with you about all kinds of numbers. But I hope this gives you an overview of what we discovered from the demographic information that we were really blessed to be able to uncover. I cannot tell you off the top of my head. I do think that we have that information. I know we looked at one point. I don't know if we know how many within the 3-mile radius, but we did look like within a mile or so of the church on either side, a couple miles of the church on either side. I don't want to hazard a guess, but there's a lot. There are a lot of churches in that area. All right, I think Dudley's going to talk about cultural relevancy.
Okay, Randy and Donna have taken most of my time. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter about it, though. Okay. After we had completed our demographic survey, and had completed our Bible study, and still kind of working through our core values in developing a new ministry mission statement. Okay, all right. We moved into another step in this process, and that was that let's look at our current ministries and see if we can see how much do our current ministries address the brokenness of this typical person, Ken, in our community. We knew some things about him, okay, because we could tell from the demographic survey, and of course we think we always understand something about our own ministries in terms of what we do. Now, many of you guys helped us, I think it was a couple of months ago, right? We had ministry teams meet together, all right, and complete what we called a cultural relevancy analysis, okay? All right, and what that was just basically people that were involved in specific ministries getting together and attempting to answer just a couple of questions. For example, if you turn to page 15 in your book, okay? All right. We, during this cultural relevancy analysis, all right, we asked the following question. Is this ministry, is it intentional? Is it strategic? Or is it effective in relationship to the brokenness of kin? And you'll see the brokenness of kin. If you look just across to page 13, that's the brokenness that Donna talked about a little bit earlier. You know, what are the things in kin's life, the typical person within a 3-mile radius, all right, that helps define who they are, all right, and where they need help, okay? So we ask ourselves, are our ministries strategic, effective in relationship to the brokenness of kin as we learn from the neighborhood profile? Does this ministry address these areas of brokenness with some Christ-centered solutions, okay? And we ask for people to provide some details to their answer so that we can understand that. On the next 6 pages, I believe it's 15 to 21, or before through 22, okay? All right, you'll see the results of that cultural relevancy analysis for the different ministries that we have, all right? And we're not going to review this in detail right now, all right? But what I wanted to do was to tell you that this is here, okay, all right? And as you're spending the day, the rest of today, thinking about how you think Kenwood Heights might be able to address the brokenness in our community, all right? We have some specific ministries that in some way attempt to do that now, okay? And you can see, just for example, the first one on page 15 we looked at was what we called our Connections Outreach Ministry, okay? And we talked about, well, you know, how do things like, if you remember, we didn't do it this year, but last year, or the last couple of years, we had done an outreach to TAP at Christmas time, teenage something, okay, whatever that means, okay, and we could see that there were in some ways, we were addressing some of the concerns, all right, of our neighborhood through that TAP program, okay. We have meetings of local neighborhood associations here, okay. Not so much in terms of how that affects us, all right? Local business associations meeting here, okay? We support South Louisville Community Ministries that helps with some of those things. There's a whole host of different things on these pages 15 through 22 that address some of the things that we do in our current ministries. So today, when you break out and go into a smaller group to dream about what we might be able to do as a church to address this brokenness, okay, you can look back to these pages and see, well, what are we doing right now in regards to some of these areas, okay? And maybe that'll jog your thought patterns so that you can start thinking about different ways that different things we might be able to do to reach that brokenness. Maybe things we can do to improve our current ministries. Maybe new ministries that we haven't even thought about doing in the past. So you'll see that all on those pages 15 to 22. You know, most of as you're looking through those pages, one of the things that you'll note is that most of our current ministries don't address, all right, these needs of our community, the brokenness in our community. Maybe in some aspect they do, all right, but not really intentionally and strategically, all right. And those are the type of things that we need to consider as we go forward here. How can we intentionally, strategically, all right, address these ministry needs? Okay, all right. So you can make sure you hang on to this and you're looking at that as you go through this next step. So that brings us to the next step. If you would turn to page 23 in the book in the packet. All right, and we're going to talk about the dream phase here. All right, what we're going to be doing today. Okay. Okay. All right. You, as soon as we finish here, you're going to get some more exercise. Okay. Okay. All right. We are going to ask you, all right, in a few minutes, all right, to get up. Okay. All right, and we're going to ask you to make a decision on which ministry you would like to participate in dreaming about ways to address the brokenness of kin, okay, the brokenness in our community, all right? The options that you're going to have, all right, are several, all right? One is that we're going to have an adult Christian education ministry team that's going to be meeting back in room 108, down the hallway there. We are going to have a Connections outreach team that is going to be meeting in 109. You're saying to yourself, what is Connections outreach? You want to know what Connections outreach is? Look on page 15 and 16, okay? It'll tell you the type of things that the Connections outreach team focuses on. Okay, all right. If we're going to have a team that's called Connections Fellowship, all right, and the concept of connections was how, as in the past, as we've developed ministries, is how do we connect to each other? How do we connect to our community? Okay, our neighbors. All right. We're going to have a Connections Fellowship team meeting, and they're going to be meeting in room 110, back down the hallway. All right. Again, you can look through the roll-up of the cultural relevancy analysis, all right, and you can see what type of things are included in there, okay? We are going to have a team meeting with our children and our children's ministry, children and early children's ministry. That team will meet in room 111 down the hallway again, okay? That's everything from elementary school down through the nursery. Okay, and if you're involved in that or would like to participate in that, I encourage you to go to room 111, okay? If you're interested in our worship ministry, the things that we do in worship that could help affect us in our ability to meet the brokenness in our community, all right? You can stay pretty much right where you are, okay? Okay, but we'll still make you get up and do something. Okay, all right. But that group will be meeting here just in this area around the stage. Okay? All right. And then we have the rest of you who maybe aren't sure what ministry you want to participate in dreaming, okay? All right? Or you've got so many ideas in so many different areas, you don't want to just relegate your thoughts to one ministry, all right? In each corner of this building, southwest corner, okay, southeast corner, okay, northwest corner of the building, all right, there will be teams meeting in those locations as well, in which you can dream about whatever type of ideas that you may have about how we can reach the brokenness in our particular community. Okay, in those meetings today, okay, you know, what we want to do, all right, and Randy's covered this already, both in his sermon and again, just briefly a little bit ago, is that what are the potential ministry ideas that will be solutions to the areas of brokenness in our neighborhood? Okay, what are they? What type of things might we do? All right, you're going to make suggestions today, okay? I started to say there are no bad suggestions. That's probably not true. Okay, all right. But any suggestion is a suggestion worth considering. Okay, all right. Don't let the fact that you don't think we have enough people to do something, that we don't have the resources to do something, whether or not that would be money or people or even the capabilities, people with the capability to do something. If you have an idea, let's put it down. Let's talk about it. All right. What God has given us right now in terms of our resources. And He has given us many, might be different than the resources He has planned for us tomorrow. All right? None of us know what those are going to be. All right? But boy, when he lays a fastball out there in the middle of the plate, right, and we have an opportunity to hit a home run, man, we ought to try to hit a home run in whatever area it might be. All right, so I'll say it, there are no bad ideas, okay? But we're going to ask you in the groups that you're in just to brainstorm potential ideas, all right? And as you're brainstorming those ideas, identify also, well, what area of brokenness in Ken's life here from a demographic survey? What areas of brokenness would this ministry help? All right, because I want to tell you, in spite of the fact the demographic study showed from what Donna said that we have a relatively high number of people that are looking for a good church, okay, it was still only 23, 24% or something like that. Okay. And then, actually, you know, people don't care too much about what we want to do for them, okay? They care about what we're going to do for them. Okay, and if we can do something for people, all right, they are going to be interested in being exposed to the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And those are our opportunities as we go forward with this process, with this today. Okay, so you'll meet together in whichever of those teams that you'd like to meet with, okay? And you guys will brainstorm some ideas and some thoughts, all right? You'll have a team leader there. He's going to get somebody to take notes. You guys will love doing that, I'm sure. Okay, all right. And then later we will pull all these suggestions together, okay? And we'll kind of consolidate the ones that can be consolidated. And then we're going to refer them back to the heads of ministry teams in other places and ask them to consider, are there some suggestions here right now, right, that you should look to perhaps implement or start the process of figuring out how we might do something. All right, we want to start these things right away as quickly as we possibly can. And then ultimately we will take all of these suggestions plus what we have, you know, what we already know seems to is important to us as a church in the past as we have worshiped here and served here. Okay, and we're gonna develop kind of a 3-year ministry plan, okay, that will describe and give us direction in what we would like to do to try to meet the brokenness in this community. And then, all right, within a couple of months of this, we're going to do a spiritual gift assessment here to try to see, you know, it's been a few years since we've done anything like that. See what kind of capabilities do you guys have, okay? I am always surprised to learn about people's capabilities, okay? I mean, one of the best things about this process that I've been involved with is getting to know Donna better, all right? Donna was always the lady that sat behind me during first worship service, okay? All right? That's about the extent of what I knew, and she was a Kentucky fan, so she had a big barrier there already, okay? All right? All right, but her husband was a U of L fan. Okay, all right. But we need to understand what are our capabilities. What can people do? If we have somebody that's a big sports enthusiast and can do things, we need to try to tap into that. So we'll be doing that again in the next few weeks. And then finally, I'll refer you to page 24. Okay. Actually, I've kind of digressed into that a little bit anyway. All right. All right, is that once we have finished this dream phase process, we're going to pull that information together, okay, all right, and we're going to work on to adopt what we call a vision statement. And the vision statement, I have a definition of the vision statement here. Okay, a vision statement is what we see that our ministries, our church looks like, all right, once we have been doing ministry, okay, all right, and we want to adopt that. What do we see us looking like in 3 years? What kind of ministries do we have, okay? What kinds of people, type of people do we think it's likely that we're going to be able to touch with the good news as a result of the ministries that we're doing, okay? And all that then is going to be based upon the Bible study that we've done, what we learned about the demographics of our community, what we're going to get out of the dream phase, okay, and then what our what our ministry leaders then are able to put together in terms of a plan as to what we can execute. And then we'll be back talking to you again after that as to what we believe we can do. But that's kind of the plan, okay? All right, and this step is for you guys to dream, okay? All right, and we've given you some tools there to help with that process today, but hopefully you've even been thinking about that before you got here today. Okay, so we're just going to ask that you make a decision which group you want to work with today. All right, and then we will get started here in just a minute. Okay, if you choose to participate in a team like the Connections Fellowship team, that I'll be facilitating those meetings right down in room 110. Okay. I've learned from Alan Powell, it's never too early to start promoting your particular emphasis. Okay. All right. But if you decide that you would like to go to that, but you've got other suggestions in other areas, we're going to have some pieces of paper that have got a place where you can write down ideas that you have for other ministries as well, even if you select to participate in one of these ministry team meetings today. Okay? Questions before we get started here for the next step? Yes? Can I give you the room numbers again? Yes, I can. Well, you can do that. All right, now you're going to ask me who's leading those teams. Okay, all right. Christian Education Team, 108. Okay. Connections Outreach Team, 109. All right. By the way, if you have Sunday school in these classes, all right, there's been some activity in your room since the Sunday school hour. They've been split in half. Okay. All right. Connections Fellowship Team, room 110. Children and Early Children Ministry, room 111. Worship Ministry is meeting right here. And if you're not sure which ministry, particular specific ministry you want to dream about and offer some suggestions for, there'll be a table over here in this corner, a table back in that corner, and a table or tables over here in this corner that you can sit with some other people that have ideas about a lot of stuff. Okay, all right, and you guys can just dream in those particular locations. Okay? Alan.
Just to clear something up quickly, it says in our folder that under adult Christian education, we don't have summer classes. We've always had summer classes.
Okay, yeah, I don't doubt there's some of that. I mean, there was
Wednesday nights.
some of these things are comments that were made during the cultural relevancy analysis, and they may not have been vetted for exactly how accurate they are. Okay. Yes, Larry.
What if I come up with an idea after today?
After today?
If I come up with an idea after today?
Then there's multiple. You can see an elder, all right, or somebody that's on the steering committee, which is Larry and myself and Donna and Randy, okay, and just give us what your idea is, all right, or just tell us what you want. I'll send you some forms. We'll get you some of these forms that you can write some ideas on, and you can submit them then. It's going to be a little while. Well, one of the ministries that we have, significant ministries that we have, that was not in the list of ministries that I read, was our youth ministry area, and that's because those people are at a Team for Christ or a convention in Tennessee or something like that today. It was already planned. Other questions? Before we break up, I want to thank Larry for arranging the food, and Junior and all those people that helped him. And Pat, I know, helped ramrod the moving of the tables and stuff at the worship. Wanda Kastner made some dessert, but I haven't had any dessert yet, so, So I want to hold my appreciation until I have some. Say again? Yes, we'll have to work on the dessert ministry. Okay. Well, if nothing else, all right, what I would like you to do is, everybody done with eating except for me and my dessert. Okay. What I would like you to do, all right, is, and where's Pat again? You're still gonna do a little ramrodding for me? Okay. No, this will be once we break here, okay? All right. If you're going to, we need to move some tables to this corner, all right? Maybe these two over here, and move some tables to the back corner. We got maybe another one back there, and maybe another table over in this corner, okay? We appreciate your willingness to participate in this. We appreciate you coming today. And we just look forward to seeing where God will lead us in this process here to find how we can impact it.
Good, watch me.
If nothing else, you can break. Go to the restroom. Hey, at 3 o'clock, we are done.